afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of the Women's Show, where we dive into issues around women's thriving, women's challenges, but also women's successes. Today, we dive into gender-based violence and the role of media in addressing, such a gigantic narrative. And if you look at the statistics within Uganda, you would want to realize whether we have a legal framework that is dealing with these issues, or whether we have safety measures in making sure that gender-based violence is not perpetuated or is not even heightened in light of women's rights. To help me have this conversation, I have three amazing ladies, not new to you, some new, relatively new to your face, but I think new for you in this year because I've not seen them equally in this new year. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New
Year.
We hope it to be very happy.
I am blessing it to be happy for you. I am going to give you a chance to introduce yourselves, and then we can dive into this conversation. I'll begin with you, Pereth.
All right. Thank you, moderator. My name is Pereth Niwahereza. I work as a program officer at Uganda Women's Network. I lead the Women Economic Empowerment Department.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Elliot.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Elliot Orizaarwa. I work for Women and Girl Children, and I'm happy to be in this show.
And I can't wait for your initiative for this year. I want to be a part of it.
Wow,
yes.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Hi everyone, I'm Naima Isa Sebbi. I work with ActionAid. I'm a feminist lawyer and a diehard of women's rights, and I'm humbled to be back again this year.
Yes. Welcome. I'm trying to steal you to become a permanent member of these conversations. But I begin with exactly you, Naima. When you look at the statistics around gender-based violence, and I'll read, according to the Uganda Demographic Health Survey, 45% of women in Uganda have experienced physical violence. 30 have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. 20 of the women have experienced emotional violence by an intimate partner, and 7% have experienced physical violence by an intimate partner in the last 12 months. When you look at such a statistic, it's almost as though 1 in 3 women is being abused. It's like when we are seated here, one of us is being abused. So what does that paint for the general Uganda picture in regards to women's rights and gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Every year when I look at the statistics, for me, it is appalling. And I always think like we are in 2023 now, and the fact that we still have such high percentages of women being abused, to me, that is sad. The women have tried as much as possible to create awareness. We've tried to do so many campaigns, to create awareness and also fight for the rights of women. However, basing on the statistics, that shows that much has not been done.
Exactly.
And if you also take into consideration the COVID-19 effects and all that, that really showed us that clear picture of what is happening in people's homes. If you look at domestic violence, basically, we're witnessing an era where it's now coming out. It's not that it hasn't been happening. I mean, it has been happening in secret, but we're seeing parents abusing their own children, relatives abusing their own. So we thought initially it was about maybe a stranger in the neighborhood, abusing my child. But now we're seeing it's people in the home that is supposed to be safe for girls and women, that they're facing these atrocities. It is really sad. To me, it's showing that maybe we need to rethink our strategy and also rethink how to engage women to accept the reality. I think what is making this go on is the fact that most of us we are in denial. You're like, no, my husband can't do that to my child. My son cannot do that to a neighbor's child. We are not accepting that this is happening. This is our reality. And the first step is for us to accept and find solutions in our homes. If we do not do anything about it and still live in denial, saying, my child is an angel, my husband cannot do this, that is going to affect more women. We are not helping the women, overcome the violence that they're facing, rather fueling, and protecting the people who are committing these crimes. So it has to start with you as a woman, you accepting that, what, my husband or my partner is doing this to my child, is doing this to my, house manager, is doing this to the neighbor. Then how do I help the woman not protect the perpetrator, but the victim? Even if it's someone close to you, you should be able to stand and say, this is not right. and I need to do something about it as a woman. So once we do that, probably we'll have statistics that say 5% and not 45%. Two-digit statistics, to me, it's worrying. Then what is it that we've been doing in the past years?
I hear you.
Yeah.
And what does media got to do with this? And I think I'll dive into that because I'll let you begin that conversation and then Elliot can pick it up. Because a lot of these stories come to us through the internet, through the newspapers. So what is the role of media in either, shedding this light, but also in causing the harm therein to women and girls?
Well, you see the culture that we have, the patriarchal setting that we are sitting in, most times where a man or a male has done something, people want to shift the blame to the woman and not call it as it is for the man. So it's appalling to find a newspaper that says, the newspaper that said that young teenage girls got pregnant, instead of saying teenage girls were defiled. So the way they are reporting kind of victimizes the woman, and not putting out the fact that, you know what, this is a wrong and it has to be tackled. So if you reported young girls pregnant or teenage girls denied to have school, what are you doing? You're protecting the victims. And who are the victims? Because a girl cannot get pregnant by a girl. It is the men who are being protected. Instead of saying men defiling young girls, that would make a better statement. And the word defilement might put the men, on a pedestal to be questioned, like, well, how come this is happening in your community? But the fact that they're reporting, and it's victimizing the women in the end. And also with social media, I've witnessed a lot of violence against women, and it's because many people violate women using their body as a weapon. We are sexualized. You do something like, you're even ugly, keep quiet. So your internet, someone is calling you ugly. They know it's an insecurity that you have. They attack your skin, you're too black to be speaking in public. Or look at how you look, your teeth are in this direction, your eyes are crossed, you're a woman, how old are you? You're not yet married. Like, these are the things we are allowing, and it's sad to find that fellow women are also doing it. And so we are misusing the social media spaces, and also the media people are using the upper hand that they have instead of reporting in a correct way, but victimizing women. I think Elliot can pick up on that.
And maybe also want to add on that, Elliot, the narrative of monkey see, monkey do, because I know there are things even children have picked up from the internet and from media spaces, in the movies they watch, in the kind of, media outlets that they have. And then they see a kind of violence, maybe sexual or physical, and then they rebrand it and bring it into communities. How do we reframe our media spaces to be able to have a positive impact in dealing with gender-based violence issues?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I will start from what impact has the media done? Not setting my own question, but asking that question to ourselves, why the media depict such a pictures in that way. First of all, when you think of business, you are thinking of profit making, and you are thinking of selling. So if I want to sell, I have to use the commodity that if the customers come on my stall, they will be able to pick the most beautiful that will be shown outside what we feel. And to me, I think that's what I have seen in media. Their role has not been the role to end gender-based violence, but their role has been to sell. As we have been talking, I like when she brings out the issue of 49 girls have been pregnated, and they have not brought the issue of defiled. Definitely, yes, you have to agree with them that if they use the word pregnant, it is not going to bring out the men, because who pregnanted them? And if they are young, then maybe they would have used the wording in a way of using defining, but then the case will go differently. And definitely, if you want to find out the number of people in Uganda who buys the newspapers and what, they are men. So why should I buy a paper which has defilement? I'll have to buy a paper which has pregnancy. So to some extent, I think that's what they have done mainly. And secondly, how many women do we have in media? And what roles do they really do? If, just to give an example here, how many girls have have you seen? How many girls have you seen in the newsroom? How many girls have you seen maybe writing? And maybe we need to go back and find out who has really built the capacity of the media people. I remember before when you had just joined civil society, we used to have meetings with maybe Margaret Sentamu, and took through us of like civil society, if you are writing your reports, this is the language you need to use. And the media would also want definitely to listen from us, but which language do we use that is going to help them use that language and sell? So how do we win the case if I am in media and I'm supposed to report about, let's say, my mother was beaten, and I'm media and it is true that it was my mother that was beaten. But how do I change? I have to change the syntaxes, I have to change the statement and say women have been battered. You know? But I mean, how many people are going to understand that? And before we started the conversation, we're talking about the issue of language, the issue of going deeper to understand the narratives, but using our own mother tongues. That if the paper was written in, I don't know, maybe it is a Guru paper or it is a Karamoja paper, and the paper is written, but the language is understood. That would be very, very important. When you talked about the statistics, for me, I still believe that the statistics that we have are not the real statistics. Otherwise, we would be seeing the decreases in the number of violences, you know? And then would maybe see the increases in some parts. Is it economic violence? Is it physical violence? Is it emotional violence? And when you look at the statistics, who gave us these statistics? We need to believe that we are not doing a lot of research in a way to know, and maybe our research should again change in a way how the developed countries do their work. How many anthropologists do we have? How many students that are doing maybe social sciences, and maybe they are doing media, but they want to go deeper to understand what it means by GBV and why the media really takes it like this. Maybe if the media persons, as their role, go to different regions of the country and try to go deeper on what is happening, because ideally, I think we have more than that. When you are speaking to women, let's say in a month you find that you are counseling about 6 to 10 women, actually. And they are telling you all sorts of violence. At first it was emotional. This man has not talked to me for the last 3 months. We have not had sex for the last 4 months. He has not paid fees. And I have decided to keep quiet, pay fees. But what comes at the end is a different story. And by the time you come out to share, to break the silence, who am I going to share with? You are sharing with the brother who is also maybe doing the same, to and he thinks to his wife, and he thinks it is well, you know. Maybe you are talking to a boy, and a boy is like, I have 5 girlfriends. If this one is doing this, I will just shift to this one. So you find that is a problem. When you go into economic violence, it is becoming hard. I know last year's, about 5 years, we were like, how do we change the narrative? Because it's like men are saying women are empowered economically. So why should we give? Why don't they pay fees? Why don't they look after themselves? And then you wonder, if you're a development expert, do you now go back to tell the women, please don't do work, don't earn, you know? Do we want to go back? And going back actually was also, I think for me it is different. I don't know whether media looks at that differently. Even when our mothers never went to school, but they earned. They earned in a way maybe of selling the agricultural produces that they had. And they had a way of like, if I am a man and I have 4 wives, I know each of them has a number of
Yes.
acres,
Yes.
and this is what they are going to plant depending on the season.
Mhm.
But at the time of selling the produces, as a man of the 4 wives, maybe each of them is giving me 3 kilos, but they had some they had to keep
Left
for food
behind,
security
yes.
and for their own own little money. But the violence that we see today is beyond, in a way that the media should go deeper to understand how even to report about it. For me, actually, when I see a woman being beaten, pulling their breasts, I mean, showing their private parts, to me, I think it is a shame to the media. Imagine being happy that you have depicted the picture, you have covered the picture of a woman who is
At the lowest
lowest
distress.
distress. You get, we just know that someone to undress, it is maybe going to bed, and someone does not want to sleep in a nightwear. Maybe someone is going to a washroom, and even if it is your person, you know, someone has to knock because maybe you are naked. Oh, I feared that you are naked. But imagine putting it in a newspaper because you want to sell. So where do we put the blame? Because that is also part of violence.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
And I hear you because a lot of times when you talk about language,
Yes.
and we classify the different kinds of gender-based violence, it's almost as if we think the people we are talking to understand. Because on any level, a person would never have seen a picture of a woman naked as violence. But it is violence. But because you don't have language for it, it's like, which kind of violence is this? You miss it. But let me also dive into the narrative around gender sensitivity, because Elliot began it. You know, having women tell our stories and be able to, you know, tell them well. I know for a fact there was a story, and it's out of Uganda, but it helped tell the narrative of why it's important for women to tell their stories. And in the New York Times, a story of a girl that was raped was told by a man first. And the response to it was, oh, she's to blame. Why was she working at that time? Where was she going? And later in retraction, a woman went and covered that very story and told the other side of the story that was never published. Because, you know, the headline will be, we know what the police told us. And so that is the story they covered. But in talking to the victim, you understand, oh, I was just out of my house and I was going to a shelter to get somewhere to stay. And that is how I ended up raped. And so there is a whole systemic narrative that had been not told. If it had only stated just the facts of she was raped, period. It was at night, she was walking. How important is it in being gender sensitive, in, you know, reporting these stories, in telling these stories, but also in having women tell our stories?
Well, thank you for your question, and other presenters already presented. One, if media got to know that they play a key role in advancing women's agenda, if they accept that they're influential, society listens to them
They
more.
got power.
Yes, they have got that power that if they report something, it will just circulate in a shortest period of time. Now, if they realize that they have that power, let them use it effectively. Because we've said, how can they report the other way around, the gender sensitive aspect? Because we gave examples, and one of the examples maybe I can give is the Angela Katatuba's case, where she said that she cannot cook. And then you know how media reported it the other way around, just to sell news, you know. So they need to shape opinions because they are influential. They need to shape them in a way that it is very fair for both women and girls
helps address
and
the
men.
critical issues.
Yes, because they know they play a key role in influencing whatever is happening around. So media, to me, it has a biggest role. One, in shaping opinions. They must be fair, between men and women. Two, they should they should employ women in spaces.
Yeah.
A media house has got only men, and there's no any
And a
woman in the
little bit of
leadership.
streamlining on gender sensitivity.
Yeah. So yes,
It's
mainstreaming
sad
gender.
that many of the chief editors
are
are
men.
men.
Oh,
So they
wow.
decide
Yeah.
which story sells and which
Yeah,
doesn't.
because I noticed the story around Pretty Nicole, and I really wanted to stay away from that conversation of the 15-year-old girl who was battered by an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And the headline read, 15-year-old girl beaten by 18-year-old woman. And I know for a fact, in as much as the 18-year-old is an adult, these are children. Beating. These children are just, manifesting what society has been like and putting on display. And so to automatically qualify an 18-year-old girl as a woman, the only response I had is, I bet it was a man who wrote the story.
Yes. Now they're not going to talk about why the rape. Now because that 16-year-old girl was perhaps raped because she's below 18 years, but that type of the conversation is not around there. They are again tying the story to poor parenting to the mother of the 16-year-old girl.
Why not the father?
Why not the father? Why not the father?
The Waganda say omwana omubi avumaganya nnyina.
That is our cultures we need to fight.
I hear you.
So media also needs to know that women, we have unique circumstances where they are reporting about women being raped and all that kind of stuff. They need to know why was she raped. Maybe it is because where she was moving, it was dark.
Yes.
Yes. She's not protected by the society itself. You spoke of the statistics.
Yeah.
We had COVID-19. So the crime report for 2021, cases increased.
Exactly.
Now look at 2022 where we had inflation, poverty. Again, cases are going to be increasing because poverty is one of the drives of gender-based violence. Yes. So again, the social media, how we communicate, can you see regulate such information? Because if I see someone naked, I capture and then I send to Elliot on WhatsApp, and then on Twitter. Then before you know it, it's on Facebook. So how can you regulate this movement of information from one media platform to another? Yes.
Of course, without stifling important voices as well.
But now, I beg to disagree with that. Now, I don't think ICC has the power to control what is shared on social media because we do not have the domain. We don't have control of these international social media spaces. So even as much as ICC would want, UCC would want to regulate, they do not have the power to. I remember sometime during the elections, they wanted to regulate, and the only way they can regulate
is shut it off.
Shut it off from internet, which is a violation of a right, because a right to internet is a human right. So it is, I think it's kind of a slippery slope. You want them to control, but then you're worried, will they guard the most important information? And do they even have the power to do that?
I think I want to agree with her in one way or the other. Last year, 2018, there was, I captured a woman who was being beaten in my neighborhood. And I found many people around her, and they were like, beat her. I wanted to bring the Uganda because to bring that. They're like, beat her. They're like, what is the problem? Tukakoya akakazi, tukakoye, kale kako musajja nekagenda nekakomo nekatana muvuga. So it's sort of like, we are tired of this land of this woman. She goes, she leaves the man here, she goes back. So you see the mindset of the community members, or I mean the neighborhood, is like, why should she go and then come back and then start questioning the man, because she found the man when he had already shifted from where they were living in Makinde to Nansana. And she was asking why, and the husband was like, when I sat with them, was like, I had my box of money where he was saving money, and she had taken it. 3 days she was not there, so I thought I needed to shift before she came. And I'm coming from her conversation of sometimes we need these pictures in one or the other. So sometimes there is no way you are going to take the case to police. And remember, these people around were like, beat her. So it means they will not come to witness. But then now we have a mobile phone, a smartphone that captured the picture. So you are going to use this picture as evidence. So to some extent it helps. But for me, I think where we need to share our conversation and maybe the viewers is how possible can we use these pictures
To bring justice.
to bring justice?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
not just for fun and for sale. You know, there are really pictures you see and you are like, how did this picture come to this story? Because for me, it should be protected. You know, it should be protected. Where do I want to use the picture?
Yeah.
I found Pearls fighting with Elliot. But how am I going to tell the story? Maybe I'm going to tell the story through my phone. I'm going to take a picture. And when we are having maybe a close conversation, I'm like, see the picture. This is evidence, but not running with it and put it on social media. And then one area I think the social media pictures has helped again to follow up where the story is starting
Where
from.
did the story begin
from? I remember when the child was violated by a maid. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
And then the picture started moving and people are like, we need to find out the beginning of this. And as we said even before, that even in our young age when we were growing, we would be having like boyfriends and girls would meet and fight. But there were no these smartphones and then it would not hit the social media. But then today, the case of Nicole, when it came out, many parents started asking, how did it happen? And that was because of the picture. So in a way of action way, what are we going to do? Should we continue saying that these pictures should not be in the papers, but should be used by evidence-based?
Yes.
I know the lawyer will tell us that we can still investigate a case and find out whether the picture is not there. But I think if the picture is there, it becomes easy for you because in all these stories of gender-based violence or sex and gender-based violence, they are lies. We have spaces where a man is going to say, I did not touch her. I did not beat her.
But she hit herself on the wall.
Herself on the wall. Yes, I have hit myself. I've hit myself on the wall some time back, about 15 years back. And when the thief entered our house. But the time I entered office, everyone was like, Elliot, and I was telling them the truth, but the talk went around the office, she's lying. They were fighting. So if there was a picture, immediately maybe of that thief who was climbing, then maybe the story would come out. So it is something that we need to go deeper to understand how we want the media to capture these. Yeah, thank you.
So maybe how about hiding faces of the survivors?
That is also important.
Could it work? Because since we are going to use our pictures for justice, then how about hiding their faces?
Especially for the minors.
For the minors, but also even the adults
that is what has to be done because we're supposed to protect, minors from exposing them. That is a moral thing to do and a legal thing to do. Even with the law, when minors, are being investigated, like giving their testimonies in court, they are supposed to be protected. However, is the media doing that? That's the question. The media well knows this. Well, I don't know whether the operationalization of the law is forcing them to do. There is knowing it, and you saying, if I do it, then what?
Exactly.
What are the consequences? If we do not have a law that's operationalization or operationalize the chigambo chiganye, yes, that's the law that makes sure
operationalize it.
Thank you. That this is what it is supposed to be, and that's how it is to stick by. I understand we need to sell and all that. But it doesn't make sense to sell and you're putting a child's face there.
I hear you.
Yeah, to expose the child.
I hear you. And maybe before we even continue on the question of justice, the United Nations Population Fund 2019 found 80% of the women and girls who had experienced violence never sought help. And only 6% reported their cases. And so when we're talking about, using evidence-based reporting, and I know there will be cases where you can't even prove it happened, or even time has passed by. The level of evidence is not even there. I was raped, but it's been 6 months back. And this is when I've gotten the confidence too. How do we ensure that the justice systems can support women and girls who report GBV cases, or even encourage them to break the silence and speak?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So I'm going to answer that question in two ways. The first thing is in regards to the community and the society, and the other is in regards to the law. First things first, the justice system cannot be blamed because the law is clear. He who alleges must prove, you know. So when you allege something, you have to have evidence to prove that, you know, I was raped, and evidence has to be done. So they would rather acquit a guilty person than commit an innocent person to prison, and that is the law. So there's nothing we can do with it unless the law is amended to capture certain issues. But then if it is amended to make sure that you don't have to produce evidence, it might be a loophole in the law. There's some instances where people might lie, and since the law says, there's a loophole, then very many innocent people will be in jail. But I think the reason many people do not speak up is because of the stigma they face in the society. If, for example, you might be defiled by your father, and your mother is the one telling you you're not going to say anything. You're not going to embarrass his family. So what is the community saying? It is making you value your marriage more than you value your children. And this stems from the society. That growing up as girls, you're told you are not woman enough until you're married. Then when you're married, protect your marriage with all the might. Whatever comes, it should not shake you. It is the devil. Religion also contributes. It's the devil, entering your marriage. That child might be a devil. Hello. My child to be a devil. Maybe it could be, but if it's a child that you bore and the child is being abused and the child is telling you, so people end up, they've been abused when they're children, they report it to their parents never believe them. How do you expect them to be able to speak up and tell strangers? And in their heads, like, if my parent could not believe me, how will a stranger believe me? So that causes many, many victims of violence to keep quiet, and they will never open up, however much they've been violated. And it stems from how we've been brought up, the society, and the victimization that comes. A person who has been raped in a community that believes in virginity till marriage, do you know the stigma you would face? You might not even be married. The socializing with people will be a problem. There's some cultures where you're even called a stain. You don't even sit where others are because of that. So the community, the cultures, the beliefs that we have shape who they are. I'll not say me, okay, me too, but many victims do not speak up because of the trauma and the experience they've had and what they've grown up being told. So as a community, as culture, as individuals, we need to rethink if these cultures that we are protecting so dearly are affecting the people, and how are they going to speak up? So if it's affecting the people, then I think we need to rethink and change the culture. Like I always say, culture is us. We are the culture, and we can change it anytime.
So the next culture should be that people should be able to speak
up. Like if a child says I've been raped, you should be able to believe that child.
I go back to what you're saying. You have kept on talking about the issue of rethinking and going backward. I think you have been rethinking. The most important for us to think about is change of mind.
Yes.
Because our children are born in the homes where we have been for some time, and we have not changed the mind of what you're saying, fighting the culture, changing the culture. Which culture are we changing when the mind is not changed? The mind is not changing.
I hear you.
I remember someone was talking about the issue of when you report a man that the man raped you to a police, the police will just laugh. You know, they actually make it a laughable thing. Your husband raped you. How? it's because you're not submissive.
They've normalized abuse.
Yes, it is normal. It's normal. So, do we need to change the mind of the police first before we change the mind of the media?
Or even the people
Even the
themselves.
people,
Yeah.
you know? Because for me, I think when you think of the big picture of gender-based violence, it goes back to the mind of everyone. You know, even if I'm violating the rights of the other person, and I have not thought about myself as a self, what do I want to see? What would I have taken the environment to be if I want to live in it? Because definitely an abusive marriage is not a good space for anyone. An abusive space is not good for anyone, even at the university, even in any institution anyway. So building a better environment and a sustainable development, sustainable environment for us, I think the individual, the media should first of all think about how to change the mind. Because as she says, imagine if I'm defiled and I'm this young girl, even if it's from the a school in the primary school, and the head teacher defiles me. You know, there is no way this girl is going to talk about it. I remember yesterday there is this viral thing that was moving about Budo secondary and and how things have started changing. Maybe the parent has an issue with the teacher, or the child is not performing well. It goes back to the mind. Who is going to come out and speak the truth? You know, who is going to report this case? And if I report this case, what are the people in my constituency going to think?
And will justice be served?
Yes. If I go to police, is police going to write this statement in a true manner? And where is it going to end to? You know, if it is going to a legal person, how is the legal person going to understand the statement? You know, if this person's mind is like, yes, it is not right for this girl to be defiled. You get it? Yes, it is going to a media space. The media space for me, actually, I don't care whether there is a woman or a man, you know, but the sensitivity of reporting, the responsiveness in reporting the case is very key. And what has to come out while I'm using the mind and the rethinking the mindset, rethinking the new strategies, is about who is in. What am I trying to say? Who is being impacted on? Who is being violated? And who is affected? Pereth was bringing out the issue of, like, I think poverty is one of the drivers. Yes, it is one of the drivers. But when you go back to the other man who says you are not a poor person, but it's your mind, then it goes back to our mindset change. If we can rethink and re-strategize around there.
I hear you. Let's take a quick break and then be back and have this conversation go on. Thank Welcome back. Please take a minute to subscribe, like, and comment on the show. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section. We'll definitely look into them in the break. We are going to come back, and we've been talking about gender-based violence, and we've talked about the need for mindset change, both for the media and for the communities. We've talked about the need to revisit our justice systems and why they are not providing, the key solutions. But importantly, where we need to rethink the role of media in reporting and the power they hold in helping us understand, shape language, but then also create sensitivity around gender-based violence issues. But on that note, I want to bring you, Elliot, in regards to mental health. It is stated in this very report by the Uganda Demographic Health that a lot of women that experience gender-based violence also experience mental health issues. But then on top of that, they are also at a higher risk for HIV/AIDS, and STIs. How do we, navigate that conundrum of now that on top of gender-based violence, whatever form or shape it looks like, we also now have to address mental health issues, but then also access to emergency medicines, access to health care and insurance for these women. Even before we have any other conversation, how do we help them move past the experiences they've gone through?
Yeah, I will start from the point of healthcare. To tell the truth, from my observation, I think we don't have healthcare. First of all, when you think of why we have increased numbers of women with mental health, and maybe not only women, but even the girls, and definitely some boys and men. Let's just not think about only us. We don't have health care. I will definitely start with myself. I underwent a depression during COVID, but it was normal for everyone around me. People didn't seem to understand what was going on with me, and it started definitely with majority of friends dying during COVID. Then it went into issues of home issues, and then thinking a lot, But going to the hospital, that was for me, because I have maybe some money to go, and maybe I have talked to a group of friends who are like, no, go and check. But we don't have a number of women, and maybe not only in the villages, but even here where we live, even women in the civil society, that you pick up and say, I need health care. It's my health, because I still believe that when you don't have money, I don't want to call it wealth, as we usually say, that wealth and health goes together, and you don't have people to push you, you will just go to the clinic to seek services. And then we have this thing of like, I don't want to know what is happening with me. I will just die. If you have had majority of women, like, I can't even go to test cancer of the cervix. I can't even go of my breasts, because
bad news.
The bad news,
No news is good news.
Yes. We have a majority of women that you find that they have non-communicable diseases, like even hemorrhoids, the piles. And you're like, you are getting mental health. It is painful. You can't do what? And the man is not going to understand. And like the usual a conversation that we have with men, when do you think your wife needs sex? When do you need, she can't communicate that you need sex? How do these take you into mental health? You are not interested in sex. Maybe you have just completed your menstrual cycle, and your husband is not aware. And it goes back to the mindset I was telling you and the information. And maybe your husband is also tired and is now maybe not interested in sex, but for you this is the time that you want. And as she said from the beginning, they have taught us, you woman don't ask for sex. That is taboo. How do you start? Then you have not had this conversation that maybe a woman goes into the menstrual cycle, but at a certain time she's interested and at a certain time she's not.
Yes.
And you have not even had a conversation with your husband, and he doesn't know. Actually, he doesn't know, because you have not had a conversation. And then you find those simple things are taking you into issues of mental health, and because you have not shared. But it really crops up, and then it brings out those concerns, not poverty actually, for the gender-based violence. It starts let me keep quiet. This man
Oh,
is
yeah.
not interested
Silence.
in me.
Mm.
This man
Does
said,
not respect
yes,
me.
does not respect me. But for you, you are fighting with your own, you have your battles that you are fighting with, but related to mental health. The other day, we had a conversation at Nkumba University, and we were talking about the issues of mental health and gender-based violence. And I gave them a story of where do you come from. When you go back into understanding the gender perspectives, but using, I think I would use one of our writers, only one, I think I would use Simone de Beauvoir. And when Simone de Beauvoir is saying that if you don't understand your child from the time you have conceived, and you think you are going to understand the child later, then you may find issues. And definitely this happens to us, and this has really caused mental health. Because you have grown up in this space where you are not understanding yourself as a person, and the people around you don't understand you, and your mother maybe has a level of keeping silent on issues, is not going to sit with you and tell you, my daughter, this is like this is like this, and you don't have this information. But even if your mother informed you about this, the outside, the socialization beyond your home becomes a story. You are like, my mother said it is okay, I can just get out of this marriage.
And even today, when you look at the media platforms that we have,
Yes.
the level of advice everyone is
It's
making,
giving.
almost like everyone is an expert now.
Thank you.
It's
And
surprising.
sometimes the advice they are giving you is an advice which is generalized.
Exactly.
It is not about the who.
It has no context.
Yeah, that one
It is
person.
not tailored for
Yes,
you.
because actually gender-based violence in a way, I respect late Hope, late Hope. I have forgotten her name, but Hope was instead of it. Hope used to say that, hey, don't wait for people to write about your GBV, because your GBV is different from my GBV.
Yes, exactly.
The bishop in his house has his own GBV.
Yes.
The school headmaster has his own GBV. The principal judge
The market woman
has
yes.
his own GBV. Your daughter has her own GBV. The media person we are talking about that is reporting has her own maybe sort of gender-based violence within that space. But how do we treat the monster that has really increased the mental health issues, not only for the women, but even for the girls? If you have seen the girls, if you have been really following up, I've been using an example of when my daughter finished the P7 and they started forming groups of WhatsApp, and then you saw the conversation. And someone tells you, I actually have even mental health. Oh, wow. I can't even manage this home environment. Maybe they are not saying that the father and the mother are fighting. Maybe they are not saying that the situation, the environment, that bread is maybe not enough. And then no one is there to protect them. Who is there to protect them? Because you just need to know one thing I shared again, I think, at Nkuba, which is still valid, that if I have a gender-based violence problem, definitely I am going to affect my family. My children are going to find themselves with mental issues.
True.
You as sisters, you are going to call me thinking I'm Elliot that when I'm really battling with a monster, and I'm not going to give you the true sense of what you feel. And then you find sometimes you have cases where a woman came to you, I'm like, I don't know. My mind is not working. My head is not working. It is mental case, But do we have, first of all, trained personnel out of the health centers, in our communities, like the way we used to have village health teams, the way we find ourselves, like I think at CSBAG we use the issue of participatory budget groups. Do we have the mental health ambassadors in our communities that can understand GBV in its entirety,
yes, and then tailor it to
mental health. You get what I'm saying? I remember last time I talked about the issue of the church-related issues.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at how the pastors are handling the mass, you know, the women in the churches, the girls in the churches, and then you hear Pastor Tom saying, it is only Jesus, it is only maybe Allah that is going to manage issues of mental health and issues of gender-based violence. But it takes us back. For me, I think it takes us back, not being emotional, but how do we again use the principles of repacking, repacking the new journey of knowing how do we re-strategize around these things. You know, it doesn't matter if maybe we need to have a communication to Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Maybe if we want to look at the Equal Opportunities Commission and then say, I think you don't need only to be having compacts for gender and equity budgeting, but we should have compacts for GBV in a way to understand how we are going to reduce on the mental health cases, because they are going to increase not only at household level, but even in other institutions. And at schools now, it is becoming more of a danger. In a way, the teachers themselves are violated. They also have their own issues they are dealing with. And you remember what we say, that our pupils, our children, listen and respect the teachers, than the parents, you know. But if the teachers also have their own issues from COVID, as Pereth said, that during COVID, they completely failed to get where to go. And some of them moved out to the country, of which you had last week. She will tell us maybe what the legal framework is talking about when you had already paid for your passport and you have used the loan to purchase a passport, and you are maybe looking for a visa to go to Saudi Arabia, and then there is a ban. You see, so the number of violences and the number of mental health cases are too many. And then maybe this teacher had already signed out. I am not going to teach next year, but this teacher is coming back to school. And then you are asking this teacher to understand the new curriculum.
Someone who has already switched.
You know, you have already switched off, you know, and then you are telling no, you are now coming back. You see, I wanted to do this, but I'm coming back to teach. And maybe you were a good teacher, but the directors of the schools are bringing the good teacher, but you have the mental health problem. But also, so you are transferring it to the children.
Also to emphasize, you know, a culture, I'm not going to say Africa, but in Uganda specifically, we are not keen to what mental health is.
Yes.
And that's why you find that there are many people who do not think mental health is an issue on its own. When you talk about, like, I'm depressed, I'm stressed, they're like, oh, since you're idle. As parents, you're idle, go do housework. You don't really take to understand, why is my child saying they're stressed? Is mental health really an issue? It's not a context that we've taken in as Ugandans.
Then you break a dozen of cups because they have told you to go and do wash
you break the dozens.
Yes, and then they beat you because there is no money.
And because they don't understand, they don't have
so
language
for
that.
Yes, that communication is lacking. And I think it also explains why during the COVID and with the kids home and parents, we witness a lot of people committing suicide.
Exactly.
We witness a lot of people. I remember I took a friend to one of the mental health institutions, and my dear, what I did not find there, the number of patients that were admitted was really huge. I had never been in a mental institution before, and I'm like, oh wow, so this is really happening, and we are not even like aware that you as an individual could be having a mental health. And I remember somewhere I read an issue regarding 2 in every 3 Ugandans has a mental health problem.
41 Ugandans have mental health issues.
So the way the media is reporting it, they are crazy. And I think that is manifesting in how I'm trying to relate Nicole's issue of her being battered. That is a mental health issue from the person who was battering,
why would you actually batter and beat a person? And recently I heard of a girl who burnt a friend in her house. That is a mental health issue. I was also watching a video this weekend of women undressing themselves and beating up each other. I'm like, this is a mental health issue.
Yes.
Because you as a human being, why would you undress your fellow human
Someone
being in public and beat them? So I'm saying, like, I'm hearing what you're saying, Elliot. I'm saying, I think as women, as a country, and not even women, everyone needs to really pay keen attention to mental health and take it serious. It's not that someone is bored or someone has nothing to do, like our parents usually say. I'm not feeling well, I think I'm depressed. We're getting a meeting. Like you think you're keeping the person busy,
will deal with the
will deal with that issue, and not forgetting that the more you're stressing them with housework, that housework could be the trigger for her mental issues. So I think we need to get a culture, and the government needs to do something about it. Really invest in because mental health treatment is quite expensive.
Yes.
Not everyone can access it. So on top of the Center 4, Center 3 medical centers we have in the villages, why don't we rethink and also re-establish way forward to have departments of mental health care? Maybe this way. And we're also looking at urban people, but people in the villages have a lot of mental issues with food scarcity, poverty, the violence that they're facing with their intimate partners, and they don't know where to go because culture says stick and hold your marriage no matter what. Who is talking to these women to make sure they're okay? Who is looking at their mental issues? So gender-based violence, to me, with the trauma that they find, that they face, really affects someone. Imagine someone just abusing you. Sometimes if someone says something that I can sleep and think about it, she said this. Why didn't I respond? That is a mental issue. So imagine people who are undergoing that on a daily.
Sleep depriving.
Yeah, on a daily. And you cannot say that I'm not going through it. There is an issue that like makes you lack sleep in your house at a certain point. It could be work that you're doing. Probably you have a lot of, things that you're doing, and that is affecting you somehow. So imagine you're an executive director in an organization. You have these reports that are pending, the donors are disturbing you, the workers are stressing you. Then you're a wife.
You're a mother.
Your husband, like you said, is not sure of your cycle, and they don't know whether it's a dry spell or you're ovulating for you to be trying to have sexual intercourse. And this guy must have some. So on top of that, you'll end up raping you. And they told you marriage, there's no rape. You have to be struggling with
defining marital rape.
So on top of that, you have children who are telling you, Mommy, I'm stressed. I'm not going to eat posho today because I don't feel like it. And you're like, you will eat it by hook, by crook. So the issues that are surrounding, to me, GBV and mental health are serious.
A big ecosystem that we need to create in addressing mental health issues. And I think on that very note, and critically, I would want to advocate for the public health insurance scheme so that at least every Ugandan can afford health care, because we can no longer leave health care to the private entities, especially in an epoch where public services are still struggling. We need to find ways of making health care affordable and also mental health care affordable. I want to bring you into this conversation, Pereth, but critically on the 16 days of activism around gender-based violence. Every November to December, we slate off 16 days to highlight key issues on gender-based violence. But I'm afraid we are now, it's becoming ritualistic, because that is when you also see a lot of media coverage around gender-based violence issues. And I hate for us to, only select November at the end of the year, when we've had all this crazy chaos happen within the year. At the end of the year is when we are like, oh, the report says, the police report says, the numbers are crazy. We need to do something. How do we build collective action within the women's movement, within the population, within the security forces, to continue to have concerted efforts in addressing gender-based violence issues on a daily and not just for 16 days?
Thank you so much for your question. I remember one time during the 16 days of activism, one of us said that why don't we do this awareness every single day, starting from January to January? Why do we only have to wait for the 16 days of activism, as you're asking? One, I think our minds are boxed to the international world. when we only wait for those international campaign days, and which is very wrong, because we are facing these issues as our country on a daily basis. Yes. A lot has been done regarding over 16 days of activism. Many actors are doing quite a number of things, and one of them, for example, on it, we are doing, we have shelters in Kamuli, where we shelter survivors of GBV on a daily basis. Yeah, only that maybe 16 days of acting, when they come, we do now the reporting, but things are being done on a daily basis. Yes, people are doing work on a daily basis. Even if you ask Elliot now what she did out a few weeks ago,
Elliot
yes,
is planning to go out again.
they're already
and do
planning.
the work.
Yes, so work is being done. Only that we do reporting during that time to show what have highlight what was done. You know, what are the issues? Yes, so I think work is being done on a daily basis, but the reporting is lacking now. I think the reporting is lacking. We are not reporting exactly what we are doing. We need data, yeah? But the data is there, but now who to collect it first and foremost? And how do we even collect the data? Yeah. So
can I interject?
Yes.
As you ask those questions, I don't think we are going to have time to answer those questions. But we need to ask a big question: who is supposed to answer them? You know who is supposed to answer those questions? Because I think I've done some work with UNET, and I have been looking for the answer of the women who are in GB shelters. You know, first of all, appeals. The question is, should we continue having the 16 days of activism as women movement, as women rights organizations? Should we continue saying that this is a time where we are creating awareness, but then what? What next? What next after doing that? I know ActionAid
after December ends, what are we doing?
Yeah, I know ActionAid also have the shelters, but as we had a discussion, the mind just croaked. I'm like, can we change? Can we change these shelters? Should we continue calling them GBV shelters? Then it means people will be comfortably coming to the shelters and call it a GBV shelters. As we talk of mental health concerns, can we call them healing centers? Can we have a way of making them healing centers that if women,
by the time you leave, you're a better person.
Yeah, you were a better person.
I think that's what's being done under those shelters. Maybe
I am talking about the language.
The language
talks about from the beginning
yes.
of like how we started the 16 days of activism, and knowing definitely that we all run by donors. If the donors are like, we are giving you money for 16 days of activism,
you can't say no.
Then you can't say
everybody gets
and that's why I'm like, can we start now in this conversation? Maybe the viewers will also join us and say we want to start changing the narrative, and we want to start talking about the healing centers, and we want talking about the healing months, the 16 days of healing. Like we want to look for
the 65 days of
activism.
You're very right.
Of healing. Yeah. We are looking for the ways of healing people because we are tired of GBV.
And then do the work 365 days.
365 days, you know. And we may need to start looking at, if we want to bring the media on the same level, how do they want to help us heal? Are we going to heal because you have put my mother's picture or my daughter's picture in public, you know? How do you want us to work together, you know? If I'm doing this research of the healing package, what will be the healing package for the shelters, you know? What levels of GBV cases are coming into the healing center, and which expertise do I need from ActionAid? You know, which expertise do I need for legal justice? And the justice centers are also many. How do we work with them?
Yeah, collaborate and work together.
Sure. Yeah.
As you're saying, I was thinking, I'm like, it also reflected back to the question you asked regarding when people are quiet and silent. I'm thinking we have the first responders. We have clinics where some people might not say that they've been violated, but as a doctor, you can look at a wound and you're like, this person was hit, this was battered. I think in advanced countries, maybe because of the movies that we watch, that a woman would go with, a black patch,
Mm.
and they will ask her, is this a case of violence? Even if she says no, the doctor will say it is violence because the indication is you were hit by maybe someone's arm, or it was someone used something blunt to hit you. So if we have our doctors intentional, which is also a challenge because the health system and all that, but if we could have health centers, doctors, where some women go for treatment, and you're able to identify that this is a violence, it's an action of violence, and be able to report. Maybe we can get the right statistics. Maybe these women can be helped without them saying out. But if you can report as a doctor that this is a case of violence, you include the police, and the husband will be called for questioning without the woman saying it out. Maybe we can tackle violence somehow.
I hear you.
Such a way.
But before I let Pereth go, and I think also this is a critical question on where do we go from here? And I think it will also wind down our conversation. How can we support, women who have experienced gender-based violence? And hear me out. As a country, and I think we'll just take roots on this question. As a country, we have enough legal framework. I took some time to write down some. We have the Domestic Violence Act of 2010, which established the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit, meaning we have help even in the system. We have the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture, 2012. We have the Penal Code Act. We have the Sexual Offences Act. We have the Children's Act that protects children against violence. We have the Constitution of Uganda that also has, articles and laws that protect people, women and girls against violence. But despite these legal frameworks, there are challenges in implementing, in enforcing them, and there are gaps also in the legal provisions in dealing with gender-based violence. But against that backdrop, I wonder if there are other concerted efforts outside these legal frameworks that we could tap into to help women that are experiencing gender-based violence. And that is where I want us to, as a way forward, also building on what we've done and where we are going. How are we helping women who are experiencing gender-based violence?
One of them is we need to create more awareness on those acts. Because I am very sure, like 1 out of 10 women know about them.
You'll be shocked. They could even be 0.
Even 0 out of 10 know them. Yes. So even those who know them, they are not able to access justice because there is corruption.
Exactly.
There is corruption in those offices. He who has money will definitely win the case, even when they're the perpetrators. Yes. We need also, like she said, healing spaces, rehabilitation centers. How do we work about the mental health? Very many women are being battered, and they are facing mental health, but there are no spaces for them to go there and heal. There is no sexual reproductive health services in the villages. They actually do not know about the sexual reproductive health rights. So we need to create more awareness on a million things. One, the bills in place, the referral pathways, where can they report? Can they access justice? Are they even protected? There is me reporting, but am I protected? Yes, if I report my father, maybe he raped me. If I go back home, how sure am I that I'm not going to die that night? Yes. So the protection of survivors is one of the things that really need to be, because women fear to report simply because they are not protected. Then the lengthy justice processes. Yes. Going to the police, they want police forms, manual 1 over 3A, I don't know what. They do not have where to print them from. They don't even have the access of the forms. Then there is money, A, B, C, D here, you need to sign here. So all that lengthy process stops them from doing that very small step of reporting a case to police. Yes, so we need to create awareness on the available referral pathways. We need to create awareness on the sexual reproductive health rights, but also on the services that are available at the health center 3s, health center 2s, for them to really access the services. Then there is need to do the rehabilitation centers, like she said. Where can you go to get better?
To heal.
If you leave your family to go somewhere in a shelter, ActionAid shelters or UNET shelters, how long are they going to shelter you? What are you being taught in that
How do
period?
you come out?
How are
So
you coming out? Where are you going thereafter? You know, so all that process of healing needs to be clear, needs to be put in place for us, for us to end GBV first. Secondly, to work on the mental health.
Naima, in 2 minutes.
So in 2 minutes, basically, maybe to sum it up, to me, first of all, awareness should not be from now. I think we need to create awareness from school,
Yes,
from the children in the nursery section. And this takes me back still to our curriculum as a country. Are we teaching children things to do with rights? Are we having civic education for our children? To me, I think gender-based violence will start then. If my nursery child knows that you do not touch me, if you touch me, I'll report you, I'll sue you. To me, that is enough awareness. A child growing up knowing that my body is my kingdom.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands to yourself, don't touch me. To me, that is key. And also to question the government, because I've been hearing ActionAid shelters, UNED shelters, so and so shelters. Do we have
The
government
police
shelters?
has a shelter.
They do have.
They do have.
And how resourced are they? How financed are they?
Is
to
this
be
information
able
also available? Because
support.
also,
And is
Elliot
this
talked about
information available?
I heard it somewhere with Ministry of Gender.
And yes, if it is there, how many are there? And in which regions are they? And how are they supporting women? So I think those are the key things. God forbid these organizations shut down one day. And the shelters are not able to be supported by the organizations. And then what? Have we learned lessons? You know, as a government, as a country, have we learned lessons? Are we able to sustain shelters if the CSOs are no longer there in place? And also, to me, these laws are there. You'll be shocked that even some lawyers who don't know that these laws exist, especially lawyers who are not working in the civil society, you know, realm. You'll be shocked that they are not aware of these laws because they are not being, you know, popularized for you to understand that me as a woman. And even the women, our mindset, okay, not only women, even men, do people know that when they slap a woman, it's against the law? Or it slaps someone else or beats someone, it's against the law. And that there's evidence. You see from Nicole being beaten. These girls did not know that what they're doing is against the law, because people do not know. And like I always emphasize, we need to start educating the children about rights, violence, and how they need to be protected, the rights to their own personal space.
You just listen to this. When you talk of lawyers not knowing the information, are you aware that some lawyers are battered?
True, that's what I'm saying. They don't know, because if you knew,
they know, but they are battered.
Elliot,
last week,
Elliot, as you wind up this conversation for us as well, where do we go from here?
No, I just before where we go, they give us only 1 minute.
Okay.
Last week, I was informed that one of the bishops in Uganda used to batter her wife. You know, his wife, when he was a reverend of a certain church. And people knew, but they never shared. But this guy would go on the pulpit and start preaching about ending gender-based violence.
So he didn't know that irony.
Yes.
Irony.
So, but the wife, I am bringing it because I'm thinking that we need to build a movement of silent breakers.
Definitely.
You know, and also, how should we break the silence? If I'm the bishop's wife and I'm being beaten and I'm quiet, then I'm going to die silent.
Something is wrong.
Yes.
I think also what we also need to do as a country is put really effective systems in place.
Exactly.
You know? We do have the laws, we do have the police, we do have the justice system. But are these systems really operating the way they should be? Do we have enough funding to ensure that these systems are working? Is the government prioritizing these systems in their budgets to make sure that the police, issues to do with violence, the police will never lack? I
think it's also critical to ask if women matter, because that's also a critical question of, if they did matter, wouldn't these systems be working?
And this conversation would not be, having it right now.
Exactly. Elliot, wind down for us. Where do we go from here?
I think I had said it before.
Mindset change.
We need to repackage our engagements. Yes, we need to repackage our engagements. And I think we need to engage more with the media persons and the houses. Maybe they also have information for us that we don't know. Maybe we need to have them and have a conversation for rethinking and strategizing. I know before ActionAid would have manner like we are inviting civil society to have a conversation with social media. I mean with media. You know, and then they talk about these things, and media would come really strongly and say we do this because of this,
Civil
but
society
now
said this.
yes, but now we have learned, you know. But definitely I can't forget about the issue of the budgeting spaces. We don't have money to have all these conversations. We are talking about the shelters, we are talking about the healing centers, but government has not allocated funds. Even this budget, I think the budget for 2023-24, we don't see money again that can integrate gender-based violence into other programs, of which is very, very important. Yeah, thank you
So that
so
also
much.
that gender-sensitive planning is important.
Yeah, it's important.
Ladies, thank you very much for joining me into this conversation. Unfortunately, these are conversations that we have year in, year out. And I'm hoping that the next time we have it, we are saying, oh, these gains we can write home and also count on the numbers reducing. For you who is watching us this afternoon, I hope you go and educate yourself, but also learn language around gender-based violence. I know that civil society and government are doing work around providing medical care and support, legal support. I mean, Women Pro Bono Initiative is doing that work. FIDA is doing that work. Counseling and psychosocial support, UNET is doing also that work. Economic empowerment and emergency response. We hope that gender-based violence will be a thing of the past in years to come. But until then, we want to continue to push for collective action and to also add our voice to this conversation so that language can change, mindsets can change, and gender-based violence will be a thing of the end. Thank you for joining us. Bye.